The Myall Creek Massacre is unique, not in its brutality. Sadly, this is the only unoriginal thing about it. No, its individuality stems from the reaction of the powerful to these egregious acts. For the Wurundjeri tribe, this was their first and last contact with protection under the law. And even though justice was issued in their name, sadly, this was reactionary justice, issued posthumously. Their lives, liberty, and futures were stolen. Sunday the 10th of June, 1838, at Myall Creek Station, 11 stockmen led by John Fleming, the only non-convict of the group, tied together approximately 28 of the Wurundjeri tribe and led them by force over the range and proceeded to slaughter them. Two key witnesses to this event were George Anderson, hut keeper at the station, and Davy, an Aboriginal stockman. Davy reported what he had borne witness to William Hobbs, superintendent of the station. He proceeded to take Hobbs to the site of the massacre, where all that remained was the grotesque mask of burnt limbs left behind from the slaughter. He reported this to his employer, a man named Henry Dangar, and more importantly, to the authorities. Governor Sir George Gipps was informed of the massacre and, contrary to precedents, ordered an investigation and the arrest of those culpable. Enter a man known as Denny Day, police magistrate charged with the investigation. This is of principal importance. We now have a representative of the Crown seeking justice on behalf of First Nations people. And even though it wouldn't be until 1967, a full 130 years later, that Aboriginal people would receive citizenship unconditionally, the police interceding for the Wurundjeri tribe to deliver those who had committed this pogrom to justice is a marked change in the relationship between law enforcement and First Nations people. After Denny Day's crucial work in acquiring the relevant evidence, much of the material evidence having been removed before he could get to the site, and the arrests of the men he knew to be responsible, sadly, John Fleming, the leader of this group, escaped and was never brought to justice. John Plunkett, sitting Attorney General, and Junior Counsel Roger Terry proceeded to try the first of two cases against the defendants. Sadly, this trial was not successful. A variety of factors from plain racism, with one juror post-trial stating that he knew the men to be guilty, but would not see whites hung for the crimes of killing blacks. Davy, a principal witness of the case, was unable to testify before this court due to him not being Christian, and interference from a shadowy organisation known as the Black Association, of which their employer, Henry Dangar, was a member. They provided some of the best barristers available for their defence, as well as through unscrupulous means gain access to the defendants pre-trial, advising them to stick together and to say nothing. After the acquittal at the first trial, Attorney General John Plunkett convinced the court to hold the defendants in remand so that he could prosecute a new case for more of the murders against the defendants. Sadly, only 7 of the accused would face trial a second time, this time for murder of a young Aboriginal boy named Charlie. More underhanded tactics from members of the Black Association led to the intimidation and subsequent no-show of many of the jury members due to appear that day. Not to be dissuaded from his task, Attorney General John Plunkett filled the remaining seats with members of the public who were passing by. With a full jury, a more prepared testimony from George Anderson, and a sharp assault on Henry Dangar's character in the witness stand, and fresh evidence from Denny Day, led to a guilty conviction of the 7-man accused. This was the second time in Australian history that white men were punished for the deaths of Aboriginal people. For the Aboriginal people at the time, this would have been revolutionary. Imagine hearing for the first time that white men had been arrested and sentenced for crimes against your kin. I know that First Nation people are not a homogeneous monolith, and reactions would have been varied and nuanced. Bittersweet joy for some, sadness for others, and growing fears of reprisal, as justice for some does not equate to justice for all. However, I like to think that this demonstrably proved that hope for equal treatment by the police was burgeoning, and that this was an olive branch, and for a change, not the club. For the police, I believe mixed responses. Some distraught over the fact that Aboriginals were edging closer towards equal footing, and relief for some that they could now charge criminal whites who committed atrocities such as these, and that the state would finally facilitate them in this duty. Where we are now in the terms of the policing of First Nations people is vastly different. On paper, they have complete and equal treatment by the law. In reality, we still have a subclass as a whole. Over-policing and multi-generational abuses have continued to dispossess and disenfranchise. And while this will take generations to heal, I believe that relationships between the Aboriginals and law enforcement is progressing. An understanding of shared histories such as Myall Creek can help to consolidate the fact that when the state allows its officers to discharge their duties indiscriminately, men and women like Denny Day are ready and able.